Very quickly, let me ask you about NVIDIA. They're going to be reporting their earnings next month. They're obviously, or next week. They've obviously had so many questions about what's going on post DeepSeek, whether there's going to be demand for their chips. But we did hear from all of the big majors, whether that be Amazon, Meta, Alphabet, any of them, looking at spending even more next time around this year for CapEx. Does that? How do you feel about the shares, given the pullback that we've seen in NVIDIA shares as a result?
Sure, absolutely. You know, when DeepSeek came out, somebody compared it to the Sputnik moment. I think it has been kind of a Sputnik moment because the U.S. spending on defense and aerospace went up, 10, 20-fold in the decade following that Sputnik moment. So, since DeepSeek news came out, we have seen, I think, Becky, to your point, the U.S. hyperscalers raised their CapEx. What was supposed to be a 20% growth year is now over a 30% growth year, over $360 billion. We have seen Stargate being announced with $500 billion of spending over multiple years. And then last week, what I think probably went unnoticed is the intention of European customers to spend. The European Commission announced a 200 billion euro program. France announced a 109 billion euro program, all for investing in AI. So we think this is a long-term theme. When it comes to NVIDIA's earnings specifically, they are going through a product transition. There are China kind of restriction headwinds. So it's possible that the quarter they guide, might be a tad squishy, but we look forward. The stock is trading at the lower end of its valuation range. I think it is absolutely a leader in being able to benefit from a lot of this spending. So we would be buyers of NVIDIA. It's our top pick. But as I mentioned, that earnings are always a volatile time frame. But right after earnings, we think NVIDIA's GPU technology conference will help to put the positive momentum back in the stock.
Well, look, I think that there are a lot of people recognizing there was a panic. And the panic was frankly from out of China and whether they've passed us. It was very reminiscent to the Sputnik period in our country, how the Russians passed us. And
you're talking about DeepSeek. Of course, this is weeks ago at this point, but the reaction, particularly in NVIDIA stock and in many of the power suppliers, which I think continues to be a question. I would say that
here. A lot of people are saying, look, right now, it's still good. A lot of people are saying, when I was with a lot of CEOs, look, if Meta, if Alphabet, if Amazon are still committed to NVIDIA, then there was no surprise.
Right.
I believe that. I think that there are another wave of thought, which is just actually good for NVIDIA because it gets more people on board. Not sure if I agree with that, but it is a cheap way to get on board, and then you do need training, real training. I think the excitement part is video. Video means robotics. That's the next leg for
NVIDIA, you feel like that's the next leg.
Because over and over again, when you're even GTC last year, the big conference that Jensen runs, that was all about how Blackwell will help video. And video allows a robot to learn how to do things. Now, video, David, is when he keeps saying anything you can do, they can do better physically.
Right.
But they need to see the videos. Now they can. And I think that that's a big step up. And it's not something that DeepSeek could possibly imitate. They're nowhere like that.
No, and as this year moves along, we're going to be monitoring so many different things when it comes to the developments in AI, particularly, as you say, sort of in robotics and what advances are being made there and what's going to happen.
But look, I'm trying to avoid the political.
Yeah. Well, there's so much going on.
And but that's all.
And it's a lot to tackle for any management team.
Right.
Particularly if you're in the line of sight of things involving tariffs in some way or other.
Christina Partsinevelos, NVIDIA, looks at all this and says, yeah, keep coming with your new models because we need to just sell even more chips.
Exactly. If I'm going to thread a theme, you had Steve that say basically they all do the same thing. You had Kate mention commoditization, but the commonality between all of this is the foundation is NVIDIA, and that means that NVIDIA is going to continue to do well when it comes to demand. Well, we know from the Grok 3 that it was trained on 200,000 H100s. That's double the original 100,000 they talked about last year, which shows, hey, we need even more chips to compete at the top level, which would further drive CapEx for a lot of other companies. The second major point too is that all of Grok 3 was trained on Hopper chips, which is, I guess, the current iteration, the one that people could actually get their hands on. It's not trained on Blackwell, which could further drive upgrades in the near future. And we're going to hear about that next week with NVIDIA's earnings. And then the third point is just this was all built in 92 days, right? So Elon Musk said it was the largest liquid cooling cluster of GPUs out there. If they're able to do that, get their hands on all the chips in 92 days, that bodes well for NVIDIA demand to remain consistent and not have these air pockets or moments of transition between quarters that some people are worried about.
Yeah, we'll see what they deliver. But a week from today, expectations, I guess, are going to be high again, right? Because the stock has been ramping into the print yet again.
Yeah, it's actually above, well, it was above that 140 level when you had DeepSeek, I'm calling it the freakout in January. But the major concern also for NVIDIA that we have to mention is these export controls, any incoming restrictions coming from the Trump administration, if there's any retaliation on China's side, that could impact NVIDIA. So that's an overhang. And then it's the supply issues that with Blackwell, there's so much demand, but there's still some issues. There have been rumors of issues of the advanced packaging that goes onto those chips, and so perhaps that's delayed the increase in revenues to the following quarter. But it's still, demand's still there. That theory, that thesis, that story for NVIDIA hasn't changed.
So now to the AI market, which has been a big part of what's driven many of the mega caps, certainly NVIDIA now. What do you think is holding that story up as we look ahead to NVIDIA earnings next week? I mean, the mega caps have kind of been passing the baton between them. Even though there's been some broadening, it's not like those big guys have given up the ghost.
Well, but again, the bigger picture is every single day there's a new headline with regard to a new AI startup. And in the final analysis is if you think about the internet revolution, two things went on. As it became clear that it became more important in terms of people's everyday lives, you had this sort of multiplier effect to the use of it, to the business applications. And we're in the stage now where corporate America knows that they have to engage in AI because it is part of people's everyday life. And the DeepSeek news tells you that the demand is going to rise and that things are going to happen at an all-in cheaper price. And that is very bullish for the future.
All right, I hope you're all doing great today. The S&P finished the day about 0.2% higher, and NVIDIA finished the day 0.4% higher. We are getting very close to NVIDIA's next earnings report, which is scheduled for next Wednesday, February 26th after market close. According to Zacks consensus estimates for the quarter have NVIDIA's revenue at $37.72 billion, an EPS of 84 cents per share. This is basically in line with NVIDIA's guidance given at their last earnings report, where they said they expect revenue for the quarter to be $37.5 billion plus or minus 2%. We'll see if there are any revisions the closer we get to earnings next Wednesday. It has become somewhat common in recent quarters for NVIDIA to beat estimates and raise guidance both by about $2 billion. We'll see if that is the case again next Wednesday. Regardless of that, I think the long-term thesis surrounding NVIDIA and the build-out of AI infrastructure is firmly intact. All of the hyperscalers reiterated their commitments to spending massive amounts of money on AI capex in 2025, at least $60 billion from Meta, about $100 billion from Amazon, $75 billion from Alphabet, and the list just keeps on going. The demand for AI infrastructure and AI data centers continues to rapidly increase, and NVIDIA stands ready to be a major beneficiary of that demand. I'll briefly mention DeepSeek, since it was brought up in the clips you just watched. As I said many times back when NVIDIA was trading in its DeepSeek fuel pullback, I do not view DeepSeek as a problem for NVIDIA, and I think DeepSeek will actually be a good thing for NVIDIA in the long run. I said many times over the past few weeks that it was only a matter of time before market participants realized this, and that has proven to be the case with NVIDIA now trading near $140 once again. Now I want to mention one more thing about NVIDIA earnings. I will be completely honest with you. I don't know what to expect from market participants following this upcoming earnings report. NVIDIA is in a transition phase from Hopper to Blackwell, and it is very possible that NVIDIA could once again report great numbers and the stock could trade lower in the short term. Or NVIDIA could report great numbers and the stock skyrockets. I have no idea what will happen. That being said, I'm very optimistic about the next 2 quarters that NVIDIA should report results for some time in May and August. I think earnings for those quarters are likely to be very substantial as Blackwell ramps in volume. But regardless of all that, and regardless of how market participants react to this earnings report next Wednesday, I genuinely think NVIDIA is going to be just fine over the next couple years as long as everything remains peaceful in the Pacific, and as long as none of the hyperscalers significantly reduce their capex. We may have some volatility along the way with things like tariffs both on chips and possibly tariffs on Taiwan, but I think in the grand scheme of things, those will just be short-term noise. After we get earnings on the 26th, we then have GTC March 17th through the 21st. This is a very important event hosted by NVIDIA, and it is where we are likely to get news about NVIDIA's data center products. We may learn more about Rubin, which is the next generation after Blackwell, and we may even learn about the next generation after Rubin. All in all, I'm optimistic about NVIDIA from a long-term perspective, and I think the thesis is still very much intact. With all of that being said, I hope you all have a great rest of the day, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts about NVIDIA in the comments below. Please leave a like on this video so more people will see it. And while you're down there, please consider subscribing. It's free, and you can always change your mind. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.